Greetings, it's your controversial and extremely base text-to-speech daddy again, Father Ashton. This is going to be a long one, so grab a blanket, some snacks, popcorn, or whatever else to make yourself comfortable. Be warned that this video will go into subject matter relating to CSA and mental health, but in a positive and supportive way. I'm not going to be funny or sarcastic in this one. I'm going to be very educational and to the point, because that's my goal with this video. I decided to remake this video because I want to emphasize my points and explain what I meant in more detail. A deeper analysis, if you will. I genuinely hope that people will understand me this time around. Believe it or not, I'm new to doing commentary, and I don't exactly have a feel for how audiences interpret me yet. In my first video, due to genuine inexperience, I assumed I was being clear enough. But I suppose that really wasn't the case. I went in thinking that people would wait until the conclusion to hear my most important point, but that wasn't the case. I assumed that the video would not be taken out of context and separated from other key sections that elaborate on why my opinion makes sense, but that was not the case. I assumed I would be given time to remake the video, since people were having a problem understanding me, but of course, that did not happen. I also assumed that nobody would go as ridiculously far as to imply that I'm a pedophile, a creep, or that I support minors drawing NSFW online, for simply saying that name-calling or being harsh to someone who could potentially be a CSA victim is a little irresponsible and unnecessary. But of course, I was mistaken. Anyway, I will be quoting my original video and expressing my points more in depth here. Bear in mind, these are all things I said in my first video, just explained much more carefully. I do also want to thank the people who genuinely expressed difficulty understanding the video without being aggressive and immature. Many commenters were very intelligent, patient, and open. I thank those of you who were. To understand the point of my video and why I am making it, I need to start off by explaining what kind of content I make. I explore popular issues in the community from all sides of a perspective, and when I see people acting unfair or being irresponsible, I call those people out, if it makes sense to. I try to be an arbiter, to spread awareness about the fact that nothing is black and white, and that more factors need to be considered than just thing bad or thing good. I like to call out things that I believe aren't fair or are misinforming. I try to talk about how ranters critique something bad without agreeing with said bad thing. I believe in responsible ranting. That's why I call myself an anti-ranter. Why do I do this? Well, if you allow people to be biased about a topic, your community will easily become more and more toxic and unwilling to listen to other perspectives that could seriously matter in a situation. This could be very dangerous, and it could perpetuate misinformation and terrible stereotypes. Bandwagoning kills free thinking. That's what I aim to resolve by going against the mainstream. Key to understanding this is explaining something and critiquing your own side of an argument for saying or doing something irresponsible or bad is not the same as excusing someone's bad behavior or being on their side. This video is not made against any specific person or entity. This video is talking about how some people in general have been talking about a creator by the name of Crocokiki. I will also discuss my own opinion about what Crocokiki has done. Anyway, who's Crocokiki? Crocokiki is an individual of unknown age, famous for their overly suggestive Five Nights at Freddy's animations on TikTok and YouTube. They have this intense fixation on Gregory, who is a child, being molested and getting touched on by FNAF animatronics. I'll give you a moment to finish barfing. It's definitely uncomfortable to hear about. This time around, I'm going to start off with my conclusion from the last video. This is terrible behavior. Crocokiki needs to stop and delete their content, and platforms must remove and begin taking this sort of thing much more seriously. Posting NSFW content with minors in it is condemnable and very dangerous. I can't comment about the legality of it because I'm not a lawyer. But, from what I heard, possessing art of underage characters doing suggestive things can be considered a felony in some states and can land you in jail, even if it is your own art and you are a minor. Commenters, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's not the only reason for why this is bad. Actual predators will see it and can consider it an invitation to harass Crocokiki. If they are a child, then they are putting themselves in immense danger, and platforms hosting their art need to do something to protect them if their parents aren't able to. Predators often try to prey on minors with NSFW accounts because they think it would be easier to approach a minor who is openly sexual versus a minor who isn't. The other thing is that there are minors who could learn from this art and think that it is normal behavior to be assaulted. Just like what happened with Blog, which is also why I condemn Blog's actions. They could end up being more open to getting groomed or abused because of what they are learning and seeing from Krokokiki's animations. Children aren't able to distinguish fantasy from reality as well as adults can. By this point, most of us know that minors are easily influenced by media, and parents aren't really able to catch up with everything their child is seeing online. Krokokiki's NSFW is dangerous and should not be online. Frankly, I've never been a fan of how NSFW art made by minors has been handled by platforms. Platforms should ban minors from uploading such art entirely. If minors cannot consent, and they should not be viewing NSFW, then obviously they shouldn't be allowed to upload it. I think that's a new rule TikTok and other platforms should make and start enforcing. No engagement with NSFW by minors, period. No making NSFW. None of that. Now, some people love to argue morality about this. The problem is that morality is subjective. Some people don't care when kids do this and just want the kid to keep it fully to themselves, and some people believe that kids should be seriously punished by their parents for it. Me, personally, I would not want kids to draw this art, and I would put a kid in serious timeout for it if I caught them with it, only because it could seriously get them in trouble. But see, that is really besides the point, because there's something more important I want to focus on. I often hear Krokokiki being called disgusting, sick, a gross person, and a pedophile on TikTok and in some comments under similar videos about them. While I clearly believe that their content is dangerous, I do not think that creating that kind of content makes them sick, disgusting, or creepy, unless they're an adult. This may blow your mind if you're a very passionate individual, but I can agree that their content is bad without agreeing with a specific way that people have been criticizing them. If, and note that I said, if, Krokokiki is a child, then they may genuinely not be able to comprehend how bad this is. Know that I'm not excusing them, because what they have posted is still very, very wrong. But, I am making it clear to everyone listening, that there could be more reasons for why they did all of this, and are still leaving it online, beyond them just being a bad person, like how some people on TikTok believe. I think that Krokokiki should be told to not do this kind of thing, without being called names and harassed for it. Some people are currently also trying to dox Krokokiki, which again, if they are a child, is putting a potential minor at serious and life-threatening risk. Some people, often those who are children themselves, don't understand something important about children. Just like how many kids cannot easily distinguish fiction from reality, they aren't able to comprehend their actions to the same level that adults can. Even though they may know that what they are doing is wrong, they will usually not understand what exactly makes their actions so wrong, and how serious the effect that it can have on others truly is. Even after explaining things to them, some kids still don't understand the genuine consequences that their actions have on others, so they might end up repeatedly doing something bad and genuinely not be able to care that they did it. And how could they? The brains of children are not yet even fully developed. This is why we see a lot of kids bullying other kids until they grow up and realize what their target may feel or be going through. I wrote a 20-page paper about child testimony in court being almost completely unreliable. You would be surprised at how easy children are to mislead and manipulate, and how often children completely can't understand their own actions, even when those actions can land someone on death row. There have been many murder cases involving children, where some individuals are so unaware that they can murder and dismember another child and not even realize that their death is permanent. I will link some studies in the description about how underdeveloped children's brains are for anyone curious about this. This is why I am saying that the platform is more responsible than the child themselves. If Krokokiki is a child, then this may be an explanation for why they could do such an unthinkable action and post these things online. This is also exactly why I believe that minors under the age of 18 should not be allowed to have very large social media followings, should not be allowed to create YouTube channels, and should not ever be allowed to post the content Krokokiki is posting. Those studies are seriously concerning. Children do very emotional, thoughtless things that can hurt and mislead others, or even change others' lives forever. Now, The next point for why the way some people have been bullying and calling them names could actually lead to more trouble. Sometimes, people may also have a disability that prevents them from understanding why what they are doing is wrong, and without parental supervision, this is very dangerous to them. Regardless of if they are a kid or an adult, if they have a disability and aren't being looked after by anyone, then doxing them and calling them names is just downright wrong. I'm currently studying psychology and have training in understanding individuals who are criminally inclined, so this is why I feel confident in bringing this up. People who have mental disabilities range with their behaviors, from being completely unable to genuinely comprehend why their actions are bad, while also functioning normally in a social setting, to intentionally doing bad actions without understanding how much risk they are putting others in. This section would go on for years if I explain exactly why this matters so much. But basically, if you care about the people seeing Crocokiki's content, then I say that you also should at least try to care about Crocokiki as well. For all we know, if they are not mentally stable, then doxing them or attacking them could lead them to doing something like taking their own life. We simply don't have enough information to make a judgment about them as a person. That's what I'm trying to say. Because we don't know their age or mental condition, it's probably simply better to just not do things like calling them names or using ableist arguments against them. Especially if you're going to make a video about them and already have a large following, at least without being sure to clarify that what you are saying only applies if you think they are a neurotypical adult. Otherwise, you will lead people into following your line of thinking and saying the exact same things you say, which can be very, very damaging in case they are a small child, mentally disabled, or a victim of CSA. You can criticize their actions and explain why they are dangerous without attacking those actions or them as a person in a way that involves harsh language and misinformation. We already have enough stereotypes and misinformation about CSA, we don't need more. Since we don't know anything about Crocokiki's private life, we don't know if they are drawing and animating that kind of content because they are drawing their own experiences with CSA. This is me educating people about why this content exists, not excusing it. Once again, this should never be put online or shared. Many victims of CSA draw their experiences not just in a venti way, but in a positive way, and even crave to return to them, despite the intense emotional pain they can cause. Again, resources and studies will be linked below. Sometimes, when the brain is going through severe trauma, it may later flip that trauma into something extremely positive in order to preserve and protect itself and to heal from the abuse. The brain's main job is to protect itself. This is why some people who have experienced trauma may even develop fantasies around their trauma. It's nothing to be ashamed of. For some people, the fact that it's a fantasy experience that they can control is an extremely healing thing. Even when it's a fantasy experience that looks very non-con, it's still an experience that you can control, and many victims feel empowered by that. If you are a victim who experiences these sorts of feelings, please leave a comment below if you are comfortable. More people could benefit from understanding that this is a real thing. This is me explaining what many people call disgusting, shameful content, because I know for a fact, from hearing other CSA victims, that saying those things hurts them. Crocokiki's actions in posting that content to other minors are awful, terrible, and very dangerous. But the actual content itself is sadly often the only way some CSA victims can heal or reflect on their trauma. This is me educating people about why this content exists, not excusing it. Once again, this should never be put online or shared. Your trauma and your coping mechanisms need to stay between you and your therapist. But calling their content and them disgusting and sick is also dangerous and not good to do. This is coming from someone studying this stuff. Note that victims genuinely cannot help it and cannot control potential positive feelings or a craving to relive their trauma. As I just said, for many people, it is cathartic and healing to be able to control such a fantasy situation. Alternatively, some people have brains which have instead completely flipped their trauma into a positive, thus making them crave returning to their trauma in real life and be re-traumatized. This is different from the positive feelings of control that victims in fantasy situations experience. Yes, this has a term. It is called re-traumatizing or anti-recovery behavior. It is bad behavior that the mentally ill victim turns to because of their illness and trauma. While this does not make it okay for Crocokiki to post this stuff online, it also means we need to be careful with how we treat Crocokiki. Myths about CSA and other forms of sexual violence hold a lot of power in our society. That's dangerous because these myths do serious harm. They can cause victims and survivors to feel shame or to blame themselves for what happened and make it difficult for them to talk about or get help. Under no circumstance should anyone post these things to other minors or on major platforms because it can seriously hurt others, as I have said. But we also need to be aware of what we say and the real effect that we can have on people who are in a situation that can reflect Crocokikis. If you are a survivor, please listen. You are not sick, disturbing, or broken. You should not feel ashamed if you are drawn to fantasies like this. It is your trauma, and you are allowed to process it however you want. But just please do not involve other minors or the major public in that process, because it can easily be misused to hurt others. I would like to elaborate on the point I made in my first video now. I said that some minors and adults actually turn to non-consensual fantasies because it is a way for them to engage with sex without actually directly asking for it and engaging in it, because for them, it's more comfortable that way. If they are victims of CSA, they may also experience the effects of their trauma differently, where their brain actually has the intrinsic desire to be forced despite discomfort. Because as I said in my last point, they are affected by their trauma differently and desire or crave that kind of encounter and aren't able to experience sex in a traditional normative way. I also used the word sexuality in my video, and I meant sexuality as a concept, not sexuality as the LGBTQ understand it. I thought that was obvious, but I want to make it even more clear that I do not mean this as a literal LGBTQ sexuality, because I'm not a fucking idiot. The reason for me mentioning this to explain why a child or adult may engage in specifically drawing non-consensual stuff, not to condone, endorse, or excuse Crocokiki. My goal here is to show you, as someone educated in psychology, how complicated this issue actually is, and to inform people who are confused about why someone might draw these things or interact with this kind of media. This is not me saying it is okay to post it publicly or to expose other people to it. This is me explaining to you why it happens, for the sake of education and understanding psychology. The best example of this is the Alpha Omegaverse. You know, those crazy animalistic fanfiction I use where the people in them cannot control their own needs and force themselves on the reader. This sort of behavior is still consensual, even if it doesn't look consensual on the surface, because the writer is using it as either a kink or a way for sex to play out without having to feel guilty for directly engaging in sex. Believe it or not, some people feel something called sex guilt, whereby directly engaging in sex, they feel immense feelings of guilt. Consensual non-con is one way for those people to be able to have sex without feeling guilty for playing a direct part in the experience. Some kids may also do this to avoid guilt, even drawing or writing their characters in ways that make them look uncomfortable, to play up the idea that they are not directly asking or participating. For some people, this feels more comfortable. If you cannot understand that, then congratulations, you simply aren't like those people. You experience sexual desire in a normative way. But not everyone does, and that's valid, as long as they aren't exposing minors and people who do not want to see that to it. Which Crocokiki is doing, which is why I, once again, absolutely cannot stand the fact that they have left their content online and in public view. But I want to say that I do understand people who experience sex in a non-normative way. As a society, we should be able to talk about these things in order to educate others about different experiences. Again, none of what I say is an excuse for Crokokiki's actions. It is an explanation as to why they may be making the content they make, and why calling them sick, as many people do, is irresponsible. I see imbalances in the Crocokiki situation that I need to point out. There are some good points I can make for why people need to be more careful with their actions and language in this specific situation. To reiterate something I said earlier, if Crocokiki is an adult, then simply put, they are being incredibly irresponsible and immature here, and putting people in serious danger. It feels unthinkable that an adult would do this, but if they really are an adult and aren't developmentally delayed or impaired cognitively, then their actions are even more inexcusable. If they are a regular adult with a weird kink and are still being stubborn about keeping that shit online, then from me to them, fuck you. Anyway, what do you think? Please leave your comments about this situation down below, as well as your personal stories, if you're comfortable sharing them. I always read every single comment and respond to them when I can. Thank you, and have a great day, or night.
Thank you.